All right, welcome everybody. It's been a long time. I hope you guys are rested well and so forth. We're going to talk about the constructs of an organization today and how to measure them. In other words, we're going to start making orgamatics practical. We're getting to the practical side of this now. We've talked about the theories and orgtology as a concept. We've talked about the four theories of orgamatics, which is theory 2P, processes and project, theory of work, theory 2I of intelligence, which works with implied and tacit human intelligence. We've also looked at the theory theory O of the relevant and performing organization. And then, of course, theory 2E, which deals with efficiency and effectiveness. So this session is about applying those theories. Now, if we apply those theories, we create three basic constructs in the organization. The first one is a process construct. Now, before we talk about what a process is, maybe it would be good to talk about what a construct is. The difference between a process construct and a project construct is that a process construct works with cyclic activity. If you break an organization down into its smallest parts, then you come up with three things that needs to be sorted out and organized. The word organization means organizing stuff. What do we organize? We've got resources, people, money and assets. That's the first thing that we have. And then we have activity. So we organize our resources into this activity, and we arrange sequence of this activity. And the sequence is either repetitive, it's cycles, or it's non-repetitive. If it's repetitive, we call it a process. If it's non-repetitive, we call it a project. So we have processes and projects. Processes basically work with the past. It's a way of understanding what our mandate is, our mission statement, our purpose, and then putting cyclic activity in place that could keep this engine turning. In other words, it's the operations of the organization. Non-repetitive activity works with the future. This is about reducing the anxiety of those who has to manage the future and take us to a desired state that we call a vision. In Orgtology, we work with a 5V model, which helps you to create vision. And these non-repetitive activities then take us to the future. So that would be your strategic part of the organization. So your process construct represents the operations, and your project construct represents the strategic part of the organization. In terms of strategy from an orgtology perspective, it's the things that you have to do. In other words, it's the activity and the resources that you have to organize to change and control the future. Where processes are the activities which you must increase with efficiency so that you can perfect the past operations. The word construct is different to the word structure, in that a structure is a thing that you can experience with your senses. It's tangible. You can see, touch, smell, or taste it. Where a construct is an idea. It's not a real thing. So if we draw a process map or we develop a project plan, it's not real. It's a construct. It's a blueprint of what we want to do. So those are the two main constructs in an organization that we have to manage. And we can depict them, we can draw them, we can plan them. So they are, they work on rules. And if one understands these rules, then they become easy to manage. The difficult one to manage is the third one, which we call the process, the relationship construct. I said there were three things that create an organization. It's activity, resources, and of course, relationships. Without relationships, we don't exist. Our whole existence is defined through relationships. So the relationship construct is the more complex one of the three, because you can't. The variables are so many that you can't really draw a map. I mean, you can't depict a process of how your spouse will behave tonight when you have dinner. You might anticipate a romantic dinner, and then somebody's cell phone rings, and there's a name that shouldn't be there, and the dinner is spoiled. So it's very difficult to predict the movement of relationships. Therefore, it becomes something dynamic. It's something that is defined through in Orgtology perspective or Orgmatics perspective by two things, and that is proximity, how close is this relationship, and benefit, how beneficial is this relationship. So I'm going to roughly go through these things. We don't have much time. I'm going to share the Orgtology website with you so that we can yeah, there's a Zoom panel here on top now. Oh, there we go. All right. Can you guys all see the screen there?
Yes, Derek.
All right, excellent. I just want to pull up the process construct article that you guys had to work through. It's taking a bit of time. All right. So while that brings up, when we develop a process construct in an organization, as I said earlier, we're basically planning the operations of the organization. To plan the operations, we need to know how activity would move through time, and we need to know we need to know what activity to do and which resources to allocate there. So I'm just opening these articles so that we can work with them. All right, so when we develop a process construct, I've been part of a number of these projects. That's why I asked Mr. Nkambule and Mr. Robenheimer to join us here on the panel. They've also worked extensively with these things. It's quite an intensive exercise. It's quite a meticulous exercise. It's an exercise where you really have to dig down to detail. And in digging down in this detail on what this organization, it begins with purpose. A process construct is a matter of purpose. Purpose creates processes. Where there's purpose, there's by default processes. It's not a choice that you have. If we become conscious of these processes, then we can control them, then we can manage them. So the process construct is not to say there were no processes before we developed them. It's just to say that this is our consciousness of how activity moves through the organization. When we develop these constructs, we begin with purpose. So we would take the organizational mission statement, and we would analyze that. And through this, we would then ask ourselves, what is the main process of this organization? In Orgmatics, organization has one process. There's not, there aren't, you would go to companies and they would say that we have, 150 processes, but the truth is that there's one process. Those 150 processes are really just an explanation of that one process. So when we break down a process, we start asking ourselves, how can we cluster this meaningfully so that we can comprehend it? If you had to just put up one process, there would be too many things to understand there to be able to make a meaningful deduction from it. So we break it down. And the first way in which we break it down is we create systems. A system helps us to understand which processes have similar purpose. So here on the screen, you can see there's a basic construct of most organizations. At the top, there's product and services that you deliver. That's very unique to any organized entity. But of course, we can't just do that. As Brightel often says, if wishes were horses, then that would be what we do. But that's not possible. We need resources. We need people, money, and assets, and these resources must be managed. So we have a system that manages resources. We also need to create and maintain relationships to keep this purpose alive, because the purpose is always sponsored by an external environment. Of course, that would also work well if wishes were horses, but they're not. So life is full of obstacles, opportunities, problems. In Orgmatics, we use the Eop analysis, Eop. It stands for risk exposure, opportunities, and process efficiency. And we use that to understand what the obstacles, opportunities, and problems are. The only way that we can remedy them is either through transformation, often called strategy, or on smaller levels or lower levels, it's just called projects. And we manage risks, so we have to treat risks. I can say quite a lot about every box here, but we don't have the time for that. One of the problems I've picked up in organizations, or a few problems that I could just run through quickly when we develop this construct, is firstly that many organizations have a bullet point culture. You know, if you look at their documents, strategy documents, risk management, your risk registers, you know, there's a mitigation plan with 10 bullet points. I'm not quite sure who ever reviews these bullet points and, you know, who actually acts on them. So in Orgtology, we're saying that it's not possible to remedy anything if this thing does not enter a process or a project construct. And it would most probably begin with a project construct and then move into the process construct. So the bullet culture in organizations does not go down very well with in Orgtology. So when we create the process construct, you can see on the screen there, there's a process map, a level 1 map. That's the core business of the organization that we unpack. You don't have to go into the boxes. I'm just using it as an explanation. You can read through the article. And then we divide them up into systems so that we can comprehend it. So there you can see we color coded. There's 4 systems. Blue is core business, green is relationships, red is resources, and yellow would be intelligence. So we've created 4 systems there. Now we can start dissecting these systems into process families, and that's where you would get your 60 or 70 processes. Of course, another problem that we experience when doing this is that very few organizations can distinct processes from projects and from procedures, especially procedures. The way we do it in Orgmatics is every process is governed by 2 things, rules and targets. That's also some of the work that we had to do here. Now, targets in a process construct helps us to put pressure on the organization so that this organization can perform. When something has a target, it means there's a possibility of deviation from an outcome. So we don't set targets like hand in report every quarter. That's a rule. That's something you must do. So processes have rules and they have targets. A target is just something which you're not quite sure whether we're going to get this. So you put pressure on the organization, and then often we give rewards for that. So people could get bonuses or performance increments or whatever the organization does. But that's not the point of the target. The point of the target is to put pressure on the process construct so that it can perform. The whole purpose of operations is performance. And as you know, in Orgtology, organizations do 2 things. They perform, they stay relevant. So the process construct is there for performance. The rules of the process construct then needs to be captured in some type of policy document, because, you know, just stipulating rules somewhere on a document is not enough. So this needs to be regulated through policy, and the policy needs to be explained. And the explanation of a policy is what we call a procedure. So a procedure is very low down the hierarchy. A procedure has no functionality. You can't say yes this way, no that way. A procedure needs no targets, because it's not something that you could aim to do. It's something that you must do. So you can see as we go down, the processes are broken down into levels, and then, you know, at the front level, this is usually where the rubber meets the road, and this is where the processes are executed. What you see there on the screen now is basically the pyramids, patriarchal process construct system, where the level 1 would be your core process, and then as we go down, it gets more practical and functional, and then you'll see that we cluster these processes into systems. I think that this model often conflicts with current day models of organizations, because the organizations often do not have these process constructs. They just have a lot of processes which are mostly procedures, and then they have an organogram which represents how they divide humans, the authority throughout the organization. The problem is that these organograms were created in a time when humans managed organizations. You know, they were the biggest part of the thinking, the intelligence behind the organization. 4,000 years ago, you would have a guy in a plow and an ox, and you know, that would be the total of the system's intelligence. But even the process was still governed by a person saying left or right. Today, I would estimate up to 65%, a lot of organizations more than that, could be run without any human intervention. In other words, we'll have to direct our thinking towards how systems think now. And systems don't think in terms of HR and finance and all the departments that we think out should be in organizations. Systems have a different approach to this. Systems would put things together that has common purpose. So in a system, you would cluster things like procurement, recruitment and selection, and budgeting. Those things would go together because they're doing the same thing. They're putting a resource through the organization. And you would put things like human resource development, internal auditing, financial accounting, these human resource performance management. These things go together because they're all assessing the past to accurately predict and act and remedy a future and risks. So these things fulfill an intelligence role. And if somebody like a labor negotiator or labor relations person in an organization would fit more with stakeholder management and customer relations management, because they're doing the same thing. They're managing the reciprocity of a relationship. So we're stuck at this day and age in a place where we're clinging onto structures that are built for systems run predominantly by humans. And we've crossed that threshold now where systems play a much stronger intelligence role in the organization in terms of managing it. I mean, we've got machine intelligence and things like that today, where you could literally define the input and the output, and the AI would create the paths between the two. You wouldn't even be involved there. So we're very much evolving to a place where organizations become similar to the human body, where your cardiovascular, respiratory, and other systems operate without your consciousness. I think this would very much be the case for organizations in future. All right, so that's the process construct and the engineering thereof. Then we go to the project construct. The project construct is quite difficult to depict because the project construct doesn't have a clear hierarchy. You can't build a hierarchy. They all emanate from processes. They take the resources from processes to become projects. So the aim of any project would be to kill it as quickly as possible so that those resources could go back where it belongs, to the processes. So a project construct defines the risk, the strategic risk of the organization. The risk appetite of an organization is very much how much things you want to change and what they would cost and the impact that they would have on the organization. So, any organization wants to strive for an efficiency-based driven organization where you would change in small marginal increments and not have radical turnaround strategies where you need to retrench people and things like that, because it puts a lot of stress on the entity and the entity starts breaking. So the ideal would be to have a process and a project construct where you have processes which would last for another 10, 20 years and projects that would kill itself, within a 12-month period. So what we do when we develop strategy, we usually divide it into very small projects, so that we can stop something that's not working and we can bring in things that do work. So this is very much what people also talk about, a rolling strategy, but that's also a topic for another seminar. On the screen there, you can see the process construct, the black circles, and the white circles would be the projects. So the projects emanate from these processes. They fix things. There's 3 reasons for a project. 1 is to begin a process, 2 is to kill a process, and 3 would be to fix a process. There's no other reason why you would have a project. So these things should die and they should do their job, and then we go on. The colors of this depiction here is not coincidental. The reason we color in processes black and projects white is, if you go back into ancient culture and you go to the yin-yang philosophy, then the black is that which is permanent. It's the yin. It continues to exist, where everything white, everything light are things that come and go. Like our solar system, it would come and go. The sun will burn out, and then we're not here anymore. But you know, the space, the universe will continue to exist. It's very much the same in an organization. The processes must continue to exist. They must procreate, where projects should come in, do their thing, and not be there anymore. All right, then lastly, we have the relationship construct. It's on your screen there. This, as I said, is a more difficult concept to manage. There you'll see I'm trying to depict it. It's very hard because what you're depicting is proximity, you know, how close. The closer a relationship is, the more tense the reciprocity. Now, if we go back to hypothesis 2x of Orgtology, we talk about receptive and projective elements that must interact for us to have a relationship. So the projection here would be me talking, and the reception here would be you listening, and you know, it might change. As long as we keep this up, we have a relationship. If this ends, then you know the relationship is over. So if you look at this picture on the screen, you could see we have departments inside the boundaries of the organization, and then we've got suppliers that are closer, and customers that are closer, and customers that are further. So you would manage your relationships in accordance with that. I do believe that the way that we currently structure our organizations through these organograms here, you know, on the screen you can see we have a matrix and a functional and a divisional. I do think that these things are quite primitive. I can't see them lasting another decade. The boundaries in organizations are much more permeable than that. You know, you're constantly engaging in processes and projects with people beyond the boundaries of your organization, and they do become part of your organization because they become part of the exercise of organizing activity. And if you become part of the exercise of organizing activity with a common purpose, then you become part of the organization. This participation might be temporary or permanent, but it doesn't make you not part of the organization. The problem is that it's very hard for us to depict these things on diagrams. So, you know, we stick to what we can put on a two-dimensional piece of flip chart board. And that's where we're stuck now. I do think that if I look at Facebook for Business or Workspace Facebook, they're literally redefining the way that we structure organizations because they make complex reciprocity possible. And then lastly, I like to draw your attention to this diagram here, which is something I've developed to understand relationships. It's very simple. It relates proximity to benefit. So you can see 4 boxes there. There's a negotiation box, an observation box, an attraction box, and a maintenance box. Now, it very simply says the following: if there's no benefit or no proximity, it's something that you should observe and, you know, make an assessment. Should you do something here? Should you put in the energy to attract or to negotiate? And if it's worth it, then do so. At one point, whilst busy with this, something will happen. You will have stronger attraction or stronger proximity, you know, and you need to create a sweet spot, a balance between these things. Simply put, if we're lacking in proximity, then you need to attract. So if you're high on benefit, there's a very strong benefit in this relationship, but you're not close, then it's wise to attract. You know, that would typically be in business marketing. In a personal relationship, that would be flirting. The other option is where you are very close, but you're not getting the benefit out of this relationship that you should be getting. So in that case, you negotiate. So between negotiation and attraction and observation, between those activities, you're going to find a relationship sweet spot. And at that relationship sweet spot, that's where you maintain. In business sense, we call that customer relationship management or stakeholder relationship management or employee relationship management. That's where you found a place which is negotiated to the extent where both of you find it meaningful. In a personal relationship, the slang language for this in a personal relationship would be soulmate. You know, if people say, I found my soulmate, it really is just a negotiated settlement between benefit and proximity. That's all it is. In this article, if you've read it, you would see I've written there about a Greek hunter who went into the forest with his dogs, and his dogs knew him and they loved him. You know, they had a sweet spot between benefit and proximity. They were maintaining this relationship because there's a certain a perception that they've negotiated for benefit and proximity. But then this Greek hunter sees the goddess of the forest bathing, naked and he's spying on her. She gets angry and she puts a spell on him, and she says if he utters any words, he will turn into a deer. He gets scared, shouts for his dogs, at that moment turns into a deer, and the dogs rip him to pieces. Why? Because that which they negotiated is now something different. And that's the brutalness of managing relationships. It's not something you could draw a map on and believe that it's going to stay like that. Okay, I've got 5 minutes left before we would go into a discussion. So I would like to talk about the measuring of relationship. Now, you'll see that we have two types of targets. I've got output targets and outcome targets. So we need to understand the difference between an output and an outcome. Simply, an output is the result that you get when a process completes its cycle. So when a process completes a cycle, the process does something. That something is called an output. That's fully under your control, and that's why outputs are managed through the rules of efficiency. But on the other side, we have an outcome. Now, an outcome is really the effect of something. That's why the word effect relates to the word effectiveness. So what effect did your operations have on an environment? And that would be the outcome. Now, the outcome is not something that you can predict. It's not something that you fully control. It's something that you negotiate. Outputs is something that we communicate. Of course, we can control it. Outcomes is something that we negotiate. Now you can see why our organizational structures are not sufficient for the future, because you want to do less communication and less negotiation and more communication. To do more communication, you have to pull your suppliers and your customers and your stakeholders into your organization. This requires complex structures. So you literally have to create a process or a project with, and that would become, you know, the way that you regulate it. In other words, it becomes something that you communicate, not something that you negotiate. So output targets basically control our processes. There on the screen, you can see that there are 3 ways in which we can measure an output target. We either increase something, we decrease something, or we tolerate something. And the complexity that you might pick up there is that there's a very thin line between something we tolerate and something we create rules about. The difference really is that when we tolerate something, we're not certain, we have to put in extra effort to get there. So when we say people should come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, or people should hand in a report every quarter, that's something that can be made a rule of. It's not necessary to make that a target, because you can control it. But if it comes to a sales number that you have to achieve, or you know, something that should happen, but it's difficult to get there, then we rather create a target, a tolerance target. It's very difficult to draw the line between what we tolerate and what we make a rule of. Of course, as systems take over the internal parts and the internal workings of organization, this will just simply become more rule-based, because systems don't need targets. They will do exactly what must be done. That's another mistake that organizations make, is they excessively try to exceed targets. I go to many organizations and they say we've exceeded the target by 200%. That is not something you should be rewarded for. That's something you should actually be fired for, or we should at least have some type of investigation, because you're creating uncertainty, and uncertainty creates risk. So a target is something that is quite precise and mathematical in outputs. I'm not referring here to the project construct, to the process. In the process construct, it should be quite predictable. So when we set operational targets, they need to be something that we can achieve. And most companies have a 20% tolerance to the one side and a 10% tolerance to the other side. So, you know, it's acceptable to maybe underachieve by 10% because things happen, and it's possible to overachieve by 20% because we can't foresee everything. But to be able to exceed a target by 200%, that shows an organization that doesn't really know what they're doing. So we should be very careful when we manage these. There on the screen, on the article, I've given you some guidance in terms of that. And then we also look at how we do get targets. We get targets from our process maps. We would unpack them and look at the feedback loops. There, if you look at this one, you could see that right there in the beginning, there's conditions that must apply, and if they don't apply, then we have to go back. In other words, somebody has to do work that they've already done. That's not efficient. So we try to block efficiency through putting pressure on the organization to move forward and not backward. The forward moving is basically what we would like to get the flow doing in a process construct. In a project construct, it becomes something more difficult, because outcome targets is not something that you can set and communicate. It's something that you have to negotiate. It's a perception of the external environment. If you look on the screen there, you could say the more, you can see that the more we go towards strategy, the more uncertainty there is, the more unpredictability there is of the results. And the more you go to procedures, the more clear it is. That's why it makes sense to automate the internal part of the organization so that we can use the human abstract thinking and minds to deal with the outside of the organization. Your body is created like that. Your eyes, ears, all your senses are geared to experience an outside environment. It's not geared to experience what's going on inside you. I don't think anybody here knows exactly what their hearts or lungs look like. You've been born with it. You have an idea because somebody has taken them out somewhere and taken photos of it. But you don't really know what's going on here until there's a problem, of course. Organizations, I believe, would evolve to the same place, where there's an internal structure that really works on rules and an external one which is much more unpredictable. And that's why the relationship construct would become really very important in the future, the way that we negotiate relationships. We can see this in the world with the leaders, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. There's a battle for finding that sweet spot, you know. That's why I also refer to the Nash equilibrium in my article about relationship constructs, because that's about creating that sweet spot. So when we set targets, you know, we need to know how to integrate future ideas with physical reality. You can read through the article. I don't want to go through the whole things. An outcome target would be something where we try and understand what it is that we could get and putting in the action to get there. That's why time is a much more important element or item in project management than it is in well, they have different consequence. Time in a project construct is something that you would like to exceed as much as you can. In a process construct, you would like to get it as perfect as you can. I always tell people that pregnancy is 9 months. You know, it's not, you're not exceeding an expectation if you're pregnant for only 4 months. There's a very good reason for the 9 months. So we try to get to that place in the process construct where we understand exactly how long things should take and what effect we could get from them. So that was what this assignment was about. It was to get into the practical mechanics of organimatics. Of course, there's a lot to this. We've been applying this in process engineering, in organizational design, in strategy development. So there's a hell of a lot of applications. We've also been applying it in performance assessment, risk management, cost assessment. So you can literally apply these to anything. All right. So with that, I'm going to close my talk on this, and I'm going to invite Mr. Nkambule Brightwell to come aboard, and also Emil. If you guys could just switch on your mics or your videos so that we can see that you're here. And then I will play the role of a facilitator and just start discussing things, and then, you know, the rest of you guys could come in with questions. Emil, are you live? Emil?
Hear me? Hello?
Yes, it's very soft.
Just hold on 1 second. Is that better?
Yeah, it's all right. Can you hear Emil?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So, Emil, I'm going to start with you with the first question. Emil runs a company called Scion Capital. We've done a number of projects together in terms of both process engineering and project management in terms of strategy. We've done that together. So Emil has a good idea of this, but he also comes from a consulting perspective. So Emil, something that the question that I often get is when people ask me, you know, how do we sell this to a client? One of the things I struggle with personally is when I get to a client, I know that they should actually have a process construct. That just makes the strategy so much easier. If we have a process construct, we know what we're strategizing about. But most organizations don't have this, or at least they don't have this well depicted and explained. And it's also quite an expensive exercise. If you do a process construct, you could work up to 6 months on that. So, you know, that's not something we could really sell. And that's one of the problems I have, you know, and then you have to start with something and you know you're really starting at the wrong place. Another thing is also clients just not understanding the whole concept, you know, just wanting to do the old models of things. So what, in your practice, how would you typically deal with this?
Yeah, I mean, Derek, that's a good question. I think there's two things for me that's going to be important, and that's going to be like, what industry are you dealing with, and what's the size of the company. I think when you've got bigger companies that have been doing this for a while and they've got a lot of structures in place, I think you can take a kind of a different approach, because probably the budgets are also there, and so is the desperate need for getting the strategy right. I think smaller companies, what we found is they don't even see the fact that they've got strategic issues. So everybody thinks they're really good at strategy. So our approach has become to say, what is the pain point that the client experiences? Because as a consulting firm, people are coming to me to solve a particular problem, and I need to be cognizant of the fact that they're going to see the lagging indicators. So what we've done is we've said, what are the lagging indicators that our clients are going to pick up, whether that be financials, efficiency, poor staff morale. I mean, there's a number of these things. And then you know, we would know from the beginning that they need a very big solution, but educating the client on Orgtology, to be fair, becomes a barrier to entry, as you've mentioned. So we've said, how do you make this tangible for the client in a way that makes sense to them? At the end of the day, I think we can all agree that we are the experts. That's why they bring us in. We understand the mathematics and the constructs. It's not the client's job to know all of these things in detail. Yes, we want to get them less dependent over time, but our job is not to educate them and give them a crash course on Orgtology. Our job is to solve their problem, and that's what they're paying us for. So what we found is we've said, okay, you know, if it's a new client, we'll start and solve the immediate problem, but we'll tell you up front that there are two different approaches. You might want some quick wins, and we can create some quick wins for you, but you're not solving the underlying problem, and fundamentally we're going to have to address that at some point. So we prime the clients up front, and we know eventually we're going to get to the strategy, but people are going to want to see whether you can do the small things first, because that's where they think the problem is, and then as you fix those, they realize the problem is actually lying at a deeper level. So that's been our approach.
Okay, well, thanks. That makes sense to me. Are there any questions for Emil from the rest of the team at this point?
Not yet, Derek, on my side.
All right. So, Brightwell, are you live? Are you here?
Yes, I'm live.
Okay, welcome, Brightwell. To those of you who don't know, Mr. Nkambule he's a senior official at the Swaziland Revenue Authority. I've been working with him on strategy, on process engineering. So I think the Swazi Revenue Authority is by far the organization I've worked with that has the biggest grasp on this. But there's also been a lot of change management things. You know, Emil's given us the one side of this where the clients want a solution, but if you do this internally in organization, people need to understand this. And this is something I've picked up. You guys have been struggling there with. How do you guys deal with this, Brightwell? What advice could you give in terms of that?
Okay. Thanks, Derek. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
We can't see your screen, Brightwell.
Okay, let me just try again. I want to share my screen. And now?
Yes. We can see that.
You can see it
now. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I want to start here. I want to start with this one. So how have we in the organizations solved the need to look at our operation as processes, one, and also how have we persuaded the organization to document the processes? So I want to start with this slide.
Okay.
So with this slide, we've been saying in the organization, what would we prefer? To have all the knowledge kept in our officers' craniums, or we want to reduce them to documents? And what is the risk of keeping the documents or the processes undocumented in our officers' brains? the risk is they leave and they live with all the knowledge. But if we document the processes, we, as far as possible, reduce the knowledge into documents that will stay behind when the employees leave.
So it becomes implied intelligence.
Yes. So we've been using that. And two, we've looked at using the concept of process management to solve real problems. Let me just make an example. By the way, I am working for a tax administration. We are responsible for collecting taxes and customs. So if I can just make an example of some of the common problems that we've had, we would have what I would call border post shopping by traders. A trader would come into one border post, try and influence, the officers in that border post to reduce import duties. If he succeeds, then he will continuously use that border post. If he fails, he will go and try another border post. So now we sometimes call it border post shopping. So you'll find a trader traveling long distances in order to use an entry point that is favorable to what they want. Now, to solve that problem, we've said we want consistency in our operations. So we reduce our procedures into documents, into processes, and then we encourage all our officers to follow the process so that there's standardization across all our entry points. So it doesn't matter which border post that you go to, you will get the same service. So we've used that at the high levels, at top management levels, we've used that to convince the organization to invest in reducing our work first into documents, into processes, and to convince, also to follow up and making sure that our officers follow the processes. The other example, let me just see if I can scroll down. So the other example is on coming up with service standards. So if the work has been reduced into processes or activities that we can see, it becomes easier to then estimate. Derek talked about targets earlier. Now, if all of the work is sitting in people's craniums, it becomes very difficult to make a service pledge. But if you're able to reduce it into a document, and reduce it into activities, we're then able to estimate, that it takes so many minutes for this activity or for this process to cycle. Therefore, that's the pledge that we can give to our taxpayers. We'll be able to say, we're able to turn around a VAT refund within so many days because we actually know the activities, and we know that, and we've got rules for officers to follow the activities, so we can predict, the time that each activity will cycle to produce that refund. So let me end there for now.
Okay.
And take comments.
No, that makes perfect sense. Guys, any questions for Brightwell on that? This is something that all organizations work with on a daily basis. This is your operations. If there are no questions for Brightwell or Emil at this stage, I would like to open the floor for the stuff that I've said, and then also ask Brightwell and Emil to come in this discussion as giving feedback on that. So I've taken you through these constructs, and I'm hoping that you can see that when we put a process and a project construct together, we're really creating an equilibrium between operations and strategy, something projective and something receptive. Are there any questions from any of the other team members on what we're discussing so far?
Derek, I have two questions.
Matthias, yes, sir.
Yes, one is addressed to you. Can you just redefine the difference between a process and the procedure? I skipped that 1 minute, which you explained the difference between the procedure and the process.
All right, I will. I'm going to, before I answer that, I really think Brightwell and Emil could give some good feedback on that. So maybe starting with Brightwell, because this is something that they've been dealing with quite a bit at the SRA. So Brightwell, if you could give some inputs there, and then Emil, and then I would also add, you know, if there's something missing.
Yeah, this is difference between a procedure and a process.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let me take the easier one, the procedure. You know, with the procedure, we've got a set list of activities that just have to be followed. Let me just make an example with preparing a trial balance. You know, when you prepare a trial balance, this is for accountants, for those who are accountants will understand this. You know, there is a set procedure that you follow. You know, there is no room for deviation. If you deviate, the trial balance will not balance.
Yeah, I think the key there, Brighton, is there's no room for deviation. You know, that the procedure has no room for deviation.
There's no room for deviation. But now, if I were to make an example of, okay, an easy one again for me, collecting taxes. So, you know, we will set up a number of procedures, group the procedures together and say, okay, if you're collecting income or VAT, the, you know, value added tax, these are the procedures that you follow. Group them together, but we cannot predict the tax that we will collect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That so you need a target to see how much tax you would collect, because that's not something.
You know, we need a target. We'll follow the procedure because yes, we'll follow the procedure. We'll follow the what you call the procedures, but there are a lot of competing, let me say, external factors. You know, to these procedures that we may not be able to tell you for sure that this is the VAT that we'll collect. Well, we can only make an estimate that we think we'll collect between so much and so much. So there is less structure. There is less structure, you know, on the processes. We do have a group of procedures that will help us collect VAT, but it's still ill-structured when compared to the procedures.
No, thank you for that, Brightwell. Emil, is there anything you would like to add to that?
I mean, I think Brightwell covered it quite well. The only real difference for me between a procedure and a process is that a procedure has no room for negotiation, no room for improvement, no room for over exceeding of targets, whereas a process, we're trying to improve efficiency over time. So we're saying this is effectively it's a collection of procedures, but because of the interaction between those procedures, it creates room for efficiency and optimization, whereas with the procedure, that's not the case.
No, great. Matthias, just from my side, you know, I think the problem comes in the word, the complexity comes in the word process, because the reality is that the project is also a type of a process and a procedure is also a type of a process. So all projects and procedures are processes, but not all processes are projects or procedures. So the word, you know, could mean many things, but a process to me, from an Orgtology perspective, is something that organizes repetition and puts pressure on the organization to get that repetition as perfect as possible. Whereas a procedure is really the explanation of a rule. You know, it's right. To say there's a rule and we explain this rule through A, B, C, D, E. It's usually very linear. It's an algorithm, basically. You know, there's no target in an algorithm.
Yes, thank you all. My next question is to Emil, please. Emil, thank you very much for explaining all those the details. Your approach, as I understood, was a consultant approach. How about someone who is a coach like me, organizational coach, and you see they expect something different from a coach? Probably they don't expect the solutions because they will work on the solutions later after they get some education about the knowledge area. So what would you suggest if I'm a coach and I'm approaching to an organization to the senior level, let's say, who are expecting me to teach them some strategy concepts or not the notion of Orgtology, let's say. What would you suggest? What would be my approach to this type of, let's say, business with them?
Matthias, I think from my perspective, if your role specifically is, I mean, I'm assuming, okay, so let me tell you why I say what I say. I'm assuming because you're going in at an executive level and you're there to coach, the problem very rarely at that level will be an efficiency problem. And the problem is also not a performance problem. The problem is usually, I would imagine, a relevance issue. So you are there because they need to keep their organization relevant, and they need to keep their thinking relevant, and they're trying to get external thinking in to ensure that they do that. If that is the case, I've now made a whole bunch of assumptions. If that is the case, I would say that your most important value that you can add to that organization is to make sure that they understand purpose and they understand relevance. And I would say if you're going to go in with an orgtology approach, you'd go in with explaining what the difference is between purpose and intent, and how that helps you to create a relevant and performing organization. And then wherever you feel that there are gaps in between that, you can fix it. But I think the biggest thing they need to understand is a relevant and performing organization. And in order to understand that, I would suggest clarifying the orgtology approach to purpose and intent.
Yes.
And that would be my takeaway.
That's fair. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Hello, Derek.
Yes, Mr. Shogwe.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. My question would be on the issue of targets. You did mention that it worries you when you come across organization telling you that they exceeded the target by 200%. And I
Yes.
concur with you on that. And then my question would be, as a quantitative person, I would like to get your view. When setting up these targets, are we supposed to only focus on scientific approaches to coming up with that? Or for an example, I'll give you an example of a company maybe that is dealing with sales. And then you can maybe do a predictive analysis whereby you use historic data, and then you come up with a target from there. Or even use machine learning for that matter, whereby you just input the data, and the ARN networks will come up with a figure for you. So my question basically is, how best can an organization set a target? Given that I'm from the quantitative angle, but maybe I'd also like to get your view on that one, because really exceeding a target by these high figures doesn't make sense. And at the same time, I also believe that if an organization has exceeded the target by the range which is allowed, which is plus or minus 10%, it should also give a justification. Why was it below target, or why was it above target? Thank you, Derek.
The thing with targets is we have to, in the beginning, just separate between output and outcome targets, because a target is a prediction. It's a prediction of a future reality. And the deviation between the prediction and the actual result would give you your performance. So performance is really, an assessment of the deviation between actual and predicted result. But when we predict an outcome, we predict the effect of something. So we're predicting something that's not under our control. And obviously you would not put a limit on how one exceeds it or not exceeds it. If one can exceed that by 1,000%, it's fine. But when we come to outputs, it's something absolutely under our control. And if you exceed that, then what you're saying is that it's not under your control, because you don't know. So that's the first problem. Then, in terms of scientific approach, in orgtology we have I've written quite a bit about that on the articles, how we get to these targets. And the beginning is obviously, understanding the process flow, understanding the resources that go into this process, because efficiency in the end measures energy. It's a division between output divided by input, which is how much energy, people, money, and assets are we using to achieve something. Now, when it gets to being specific, humans have limitations, and that's why I think that efficiency should be managed by systems and not by humans. We cannot predict, we cannot report on the accuracy possible in reporting through machine intelligence or through artificial intelligence. If you ask me what is my length, I would say I'm 1.89 meters, and you could get another person from 1.89, and if you measure us with a ruler that measures in centimeters and millimeters, you'll probably get that we're quite the same. But the reality of numbers is it goes infinitely to all directions. In other words, even if I say that I'm 1.89273456 meters, I'm still not being, there's an acceptable level of preciseness that we're agreeing on, and that's what we want to get with a target. We want to be as precise as we should be, or that's necessary. Therefore, yes, scientific method is the only way to really do it. It must be something that can be tested. It must be something that can be quantifiable. I know that there's many people from the HR sphere that talk about non-quantifiable targets. I don't know what the hell that is. I have no idea how you do a non-quantifiable target. So to answer your question in short, I think the more scientific you are, the better. I don't know if Bright Will wants to jump in here. And also,
okay, let me give it a shot.
Sure.
Okay. Again, I'll make an example in my area in text collection. To process one VAT return, to do one VAT return, you follow a sequence of activities, you know, and there's no room for deviation. And it will take, let's for argument's sake, it will take an hour to process one return. Now, as you process the returns, each of the returns results in VAT revenue. Now, the VAT revenue, in our world, that would be the overall VAT revenue for the month. That's like an outcome. So, but to process one return, it's an output. You know, so there should be no deviation in the length of time that it will take you to process one return. But now we can, yeah, it's very scientific. If you process a number of returns, they will give us revenue. But we want to call that revenue an outcome. And indeed, we can predict it, you know, because listening to Shomwe here, we can predict it by looking at historical performance, historical revenue collection, and we apply, you know, GDP forecasts to be able to predict that perhaps this is what we are going to collect in the future. But it will still, that one would be an outcome. You know, the revenue collected would be an outcome. And then processing a return is an output. So we would not allow for a deviation in processing a return. But there is a possibility now that we could set a target for the VAT taxes for a year. There's a possibility we would collect significantly less or significantly more, depending on external factors in the economy. Let me just end there.
Okay. Emil, anything from your side?
Derek, I'm happy with the feedback you guys have given.
All right. Mr. Shomwe, are you good?
I'm good, thank you, Derek.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Something we haven't talked about is the relationship construct. You know, that's the difficult one. Are there any? Because you know this is where we're ending orgamatics for now. If you guys further your learning in Orgtology, the next step would be to do research on this, and in the research we'll start applying this, you know, in a specific area. The next part that we're going to deal with would be we've been dealing with orgamatics. Now we're going to organamics, which is more the dynamic side, leadership, teamwork, values, that type of thing. So that would also be interesting. But I think it would be easier for us to take that switch to the organamic side if we understand the relationship construct from an orgamatics perspective. Because in orgamatics, it's a mathematical thing, you know. It's so. Yes, Mr. Shomwe.
Just a quick one on the relationship.
Yes.
There's this new concept in economics there, which talks about institutional behavior, whereby we get to understand that we no longer trade according to the price or according to the demand, but we trade in trust. That is to say, if I were to maybe book something online and then I pay online, I have to trust the supplier that that supplier will give me whatsoever I've paid for online. So what I'm trying to drill this down to is that how do you link relationship and trust, be it in an organization or in an organization or within an organization or outside, that is to say an organization and its customers.
Yeah, can you guys see the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, so trust would be demonstrated through proximity. The more you trust somebody, the closer you get to that person, to the entity. You know, when we deal with this model, it's not only people, it's also entities. So that could be two organizations or governments. You know, whatever the entities that wants to establish reciprocity would base their proximity on trust. That would be a main element for how close you get. I'm not sure if that helps.
No, thanks a lot, Derek.
So trust is there. We've just encapsulated it in a overall concept. Basically a deduction of logic that the more you trust somebody, the closer you would be to that person.
Thanks, Derek.
Any other questions on one of the three constructs and how you measure them? I think measurement in a relationship construct also becomes complex because it's very difficult to quantify. You would really measure it as how close can you get and how much benefit could you get from this. You know, those two things would drive you towards that would really be your measurement. It's not something you could set a target for. It's very difficult. Guys, any comments, questions? I see Mr.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes, right all.
Yeah, I have a comment. And let me see. I'm going to share the screen again very briefly.
Good.
Okay, you see the screen?
Yes.
We can see. Yes.
Yes. Okay. It's the relationship between project process. You've said earlier, Derek, and I agree with you, that the project will either projects will fertilize processes. So the project will either kill a process, start a process, or change the process. Yeah.
That's great.
The point I want to make is that at times the relationship. You see my cursor?
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Yeah. Now, at times the relationship at the lower level is not one-to-one. For instance, you could have a project that is fertilizing a number of processes within the process construct.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a comment that I just wanted to make. The other comment is on relationships.
Before you go on, Brightwell, I just want to add to your comment to say to the people listening that the higher you go up in the organization, if you take your cursor there to the top white circles, those ones show that they affect more processes. In other words, those ones will basically affect all the processes in the organization. Just for clarity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. The other comment is on relationships, but let me just hold it for now.
On that screen, can you scroll down there to the? I think there's the sigmoid curve. Was it here that I put it, or with relationships? Yeah,
I don't know, but I have it nearby. I have it here.
No, Brightwell, just go back to the other screen, please.
Yeah. Okay.
The article.
This one.
Yeah, scroll down.
Down.
There we go. So,
this one.
Yes. Yeah. So Brightwell actually pointed this out to me during consultation, that your project and your process construct. Can you just scroll a bit up so we can see the bottom, the X? There we go. So the process and the project construct, where they come together, the blue is your process construct. So that's your operations. Your strategy and your projects, that's the red part. So that's what we use to break out of the processes. And that's basically, if you look at Orgtology, that's how strategy and operations work together. You can put on your other slide and say something about that as well, Brightwell.
Yeah, no, you've captured it here.
Thank you for introducing me to that. It helps a lot.
Yeah, the concept here is that what goes up will come down. So the idea is that to catch your process construct just before it becomes irrelevant, because ultimately what we want to perpetuate is purpose. It's purpose. We want to continuously, in our case, we're collecting taxes. We want to continuously be collecting taxes, but the methods of collecting taxes have been changing. The business of collecting taxes has been there from biblical days. You know, but as the environment changes, we have to change our methods. If we don't change our methods, we will gradually collect no taxes. So each time we aim to catch, you know, to jump into a new cycle, you know, to use projects to help us transform our processes into, you know, new business models.
Yeah. While you sorry, are you done, Brightwell, or are you still talking?
Yes,
sorry.
yes, I'm done.
I just want to ask the group, can you guys see that the red area here signifies intent and the blue is purpose? This is very important. That what you're seeing on the screen there is really a relationship between intent and purpose. And a very important statement, like Brightwell said, what goes up must come down. There's another one of Isaac Newton. So Isaac Newton said that, you know, for every force, there is a equally strong opposing force. Now, this is as true right here. If you want something to exist, you need to have two things that balance out. So if you just have a process construct, these things will become redundant and outdated and they will die. So you constantly need to push intent in to keep the system alive. And that really brings us back to hypothesis 2x. It's important that people understand that we're not doing things in isolation here. This is an Orgtology workshop. So we're dealing with two forces that has to find an equilibrium. Thank you for that. I think that explains the relationship construct quite well, Brightwell.
Derek, I have a question.
Yes, Matthias.
For the organization to stay relevant and performing, which you abbreviated it RPO, it should have two of these constructs, correct? The process construct and the project construct.
Well, it should also have relationship construct, yeah, which is the more abstract part.
But you are highlighting the third construct, which is relationship construct.
Yes.
And now, let's say that the relationship construct is not there. Let's assume that it's not there. Aren't we ending up with the sweet spot by creating the project construct, since the project construct is bringing outcomes and benefits for the customers?
Yes, that's exactly what you're doing. As I said, the relationship construct is an abstract concept, and I think Brightwell pointed it out very nicely that you know it's made up through the interaction between the process and the project construct. You know, that creates your relationship construct. You cannot not have a relationship construct, then you won't exist. The only way that we know that we exist is through relationships. So it's yeah.
Derek, maybe if I can jump in here, Matthias, I think what you're getting at is critical, because the point is, doesn't matter what the organization looks like at the moment. If they need a process construct and they don't have one, you're going to use a project construct to create one. Yeah. If they don't have an adequate relationships construct, you're going to create a project construct to create one. So at the end of the day, any change that we're effecting from an Orgtology perspective will always first come from the project construct, which is there to signify intent. So the thing that changes anything is always intent. I think the critical function here is that it cannot stay in project, because intent's function is to translate into purpose. And I think that's always, in my view, that's always been the challenge with consulting, because consultants want to start working with you and then they want to work with you forever, but their job is to kill their own job.
Yes.
And if we don't do that, if we keep it in project all the time, that's when it becomes risky, because everything in there is time sensitive and highly risky. So yes, we'll start with project construct always, but we need to convert that into process construct and relationship construct as soon as possible.
All right, very good.
That was excellently explained, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Guys, any other questions or comments? There's a few people who've been quiet. Nothing else? Is this helping people? Has the session helped you?
Yes. Sure.
Yes, it's been helpful.
Itiwe, any questions from your side?
No, I think it's quite clear, especially in terms of how the relationship construct links everything, because we are the what can I say? Human beings are the people who have to implement. We are org, essentially. We are the ones utilizing project constructs and process constructs. But I think it's become clearer that project constructs are for when you have a problem, basically. Yeah. They're not needed until they're needed.
Change.
once something has to change, because things cannot continue in cycles forever. There needs to be a disruption of some sort, otherwise it will become irrelevant. And yeah, that's sort of like mutation in DNA and all of that. So I think, yeah, I think it really all ties together. The more you think about it, and like you say, everything is all in a context of hypothesis 2x. So these are how it manifests itself in at different levels.
Absolutely. So can you guys also see that this has quite a huge implication on how we manage organizations? Because in the past we've seen strategy as the thing, you know, everything revolves around that. But we've learned that it's really about the processes, you know, and keeping them efficient, which puts a very different perspective on how we manage organizations. Another question I would like to ask is everybody here okay with linking what we talked about here to hypothesis 2x? Mr. Mukhtaru. Mukhtaru, it looks like you wanted to talk there and you went on and off. Are you okay? All right. All right, if there's no more questions, are you guys ready to close this?